Ho, ho, ho!
Nice cannonball, Santa. Welcome to the Pool Nation podcast, where it's all pool talk. And we ain't talking about netting and jetting or splashing and dashing, unless it's the reindeer. We're talking about becoming a nation of pool pros. We talk about the latest products, trends, and training in the pool industry. Now let's welcome your host, with over a decade of industry insider experience and still the reigning champion of Marco Polo. It's undecided if he's on the naughty or nice list. Edgar De Jesus and his co-host, JJ Flawless and Zach the Pool Boy Nicholas.
Welcome, everyone, to the Pool Nation Live podcast. I'm your host, Edgar De Jesus, and yes, I am the reigning champion of Marco Polo, along with John JJ Flawless, the fastest netter in the West, and the famous Zach, the Pool Boy Nicholas. Today, we're diving into a brand new episode. You raise your prices, now what? Let's talk about the first 90 days. Before we do that, I want to welcome everyone to our live podcast, the podcast where it's all pool talk. And we ain't talking about netting and jetting or splashing and dashing. We're talking about becoming a nation of pool pros. And yes, we will talk about the latest products, trends, and training in the pool industry. But before we get started, I want to thank our visionary partners for this podcast, the SPPA, Blu-ray XL, Aquastar Pool Products, Natural Chemistry, Raypack, Heritage Pool Supply, Hayward Pool Products, Poolside Tech, Pool Brain, and Knee Deck. We want to thank them for their continued support. Hey, everybody, it's me. Today, Zach and John are out for the holidays, but boy, I can't believe that 2025 is already gone. We are 4 or 5 days away from being 2026. It went by way too quick. I hope that everybody enjoyed Christmas and everybody's prepared this coming week for New Year's. I hope that everybody has been able to spend some time with families, slow down a little bit, and gotten some relaxation because January is around the corner. And what happens in January is we need to start focusing on 2026. We need to set our goals. We need to put a strategic plan in place for our businesses for 2026 because the years fly by way too quick. So we have to have a plan and we have to know where we're going. So anyways, all right, so let's jump into today's topic because today isn't about how to raise prices. We've already covered that. This episode is about what happens after. And I know that Zach and I had talked about doing a retention podcast. We'll do that on the next one. I did talk to a couple of pool pros, one specifically Mike that I was talking to, and it was a great conversation. It was one of those kind of sharing stories back from the days where we were one poolers and did that first rate increase and how nerve-wracking it was. And for those of you that now do them as a common practice, you're already used to it and it's no big deal. But I want you to go back and think about that first one. You know, you send out the emails, you do all that, and there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of little scary parts. So we're going to talk about that because we're going to talk about what happens after you do that rate increase. We are going to talk about those quiet moments, the waiting, and kind of the second guessing. So if you've recently raised prices or you're thinking about, this conversation is going to help you slow things down and get grounded and understand what those first 90 days are really supposed to look like. And we really want you to just slow down a little bit and just go through the process. Since that last podcast, I talked to actually a couple of pool pros, but Mike specifically, and we talked about what to do after that price increase. I want to talk about that. And I just want to make sure and set it forward that normally the podcast that we do is about either doing more or grinding harder or hyping or doing any of those. But this podcast is a little bit different because this podcast is a little bit of, steadying yourself. If you're listening right there, there's a good chance that you're either sitting in a truck or you're sitting in the office or you're driving between stops. And if you did that rate increase, you might be thinking, man, did I make that right call? And before we go any further, I want to say this, clearly. And that is that if you raised your prices intentionally, not emotionally, you didn't do anything wrong. And what do I mean by intentionally versus emotionally? Emotionally is when you have a gut feeling that you have to raise the prices. You feel that there's something wrong, but you don't sit down and you don't do the math. You don't figure out your numbers and you just grab something and you throw it at the wall. And that's when you start to think emotionally, did I do the right thing? Did I not do the right thing? When you do those rate increases intentionally, what I'm referring to is when you've sat down and figured out your cost of service and your labor and your chems and all those things, and you figure out what it is that your business needs in order to be able to survive. So when I talk about in the podcast intentionally versus emotionally, that's what I'm referring to, is whether it's based on those numbers or you just felt you really don't have the complete data in front of you, but you know that you had to do something. So you threw out a $20 increase and you just threw it out there. When I was talking to Mike, he was mentioning nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about how nerve-wracking it is to go through that first rate increase out there. And he said, Edgar, everybody talks about how do you calculate the pricing and how do you word the email to send out to the customers and how do you justify the rate increase? But nobody talks about what happens once you hit send on that email and the phone goes quiet, because that silence messes with people, because silence feels like danger. When you don't hear, you're like, uh-oh, and you start questioning yourself. Are they talking about me? Are they shopping around? Are they about to cancel? And here's the part that really matters. That anxiety doesn't mean you make a mistake. It means that you're transitioning identities and you're moving from, I hope this works, to I run a business. And when I talk about transitioning identities as a business owner, you transition, your identity transitions. It transitions from the small business, the one polar, to that balancing act that we always talk about. And your identity starts to change through that process. And the things that you used to be able to do at those smaller scales change. And as a business owner, your business identity starts to change and starts to transform. And there's little ones that we tend to see a little bit more often until we completely transition into the identity of a full business owner. Some of the things that we've talked about in the past is you're giving freebies to customers, just trying to keep happy and all that. And at some point as a business owner, you transition and you're like, I can no longer give those things away for free. I can no longer leave your rate at that lock price because you're on a fixed income or you feel bad for that person. So those are little identity transitions that you go through, but then there's also bigger ones that you don't notice as you start to get into that scaling and that empire. And 5-7 years down the road, trust me, you're going to stop and look back and go, wow, my identity has really transitioned, has really grown into that business mindset. You know, when I talk about you're moving from I hope this works to I am running a business, that gap might be uncomfortable. And most of us are never taught to sit in that comfort without reacting. We're normally trying to react and trying to figure things out and not give it time. And when you make those changes, you have to sit in that silence. You have to sit and wait, and you have to wait those 90 days. We talk a little bit about it and we call it the fear loop is what we call it. And when we talk about price increases, they don't come out of nowhere, right? It comes from a very specific place. And when you understand where it comes from, it really just stops controlling you. And fear after that price increase usually comes from one of three places. And I'm going to talk about those. Okay. So the first one, let's talk about the first one, is you've been underpaid for so long that being paid correctly feels risky. You've left those rates so low for so long that it feels risky when you have to do that first rate increase. Now, think about that for a second. You didn't just wake up one day and just magically start undercharging. Really what happened is you grew into that. You started doing pools, chemical prices went up, gas prices went up, all these things started going up, but you didn't increase your prices, right? So you got to that point where you are undercharging You started low because you were new. And when we're new, we tend to just go, well, if the average rate is 150, then I'm going to charge, 125 because I don't feel comfortable. I don't have the experience, or I'm going to take over all those accounts. Right. But then what happens is the cost of chems start to go up, gas goes up, chemicals go up. Come on, we've all seen it since COVID. Insurance goes up. Your time gets tighter because you're doing a lot more pools, you're driving further, you're doing all that. But if you look at it, your prices stayed pretty much the same. Maybe you charge new customers for higher rates, but you never gone back and adjusted all those other rates. So over time, what happens is your nervous system got used to operating in that survival mode, but that shouldn't be. You shouldn't be operating in a survival mode. So what happens is you get to the point where you barely have enough margin or profit, right? You barely have enough of that buffer that you need to be comfortable and calm nerves down. And you're always watching that account balance. You don't have your finger truly on that pulse, so you're constantly looking at that account and you're in that survival mode. So what happens is when you finally raise prices and things should feel better, your brain actually goes, something's wrong. And not because it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar, because you haven't done it before. And comfort and correctness are not the same thing. So if you look at it, being underpaid felt familiar because that's what you did all the time. But being paid properly feels exposed because you've had to do that price increase. You've had to go through that. And that's really the first source of fear. Second, you're emotionally attached to your customers because you built the business personally. And this happens to most of us going into the business. You're in that foundational phase that we always talk about, and you're building your business based on relationships, not just on the core business. And this is a big one because we all do it. We all do it at the beginning. You didn't inherit these accounts. You didn't buy a massive company with a call center and all these things. Man, these are pools that you either went and you hung door hangers on, or you knocked on doors, or you got a referral and you answered the phone. You were out there, you grinded, you cleaned the pools by yourself. You fixed the problems personally. You were the person fixing and doing all that. So customers don't feel like accounts. They feel like relationships. And when someone questions your price, it doesn't feel like a business conversation. It feels personally. It feels personal. It feels like they don't value me, they don't respect my work, or they don't see what it is that I do. But here's the truth. Customers aren't rejecting you. They're constantly evaluating whether you're the right fit or not. And that distinction, that matters. Number 3, you equate customers to leaving with personal failure. And this is a dangerous one because somewhere along the way, a lot of us pool pros internalize this idea. If I'm good enough, nobody's going to leave. And that's not true in any industry. Customers always leave other companies for different reasons, right? And that could be a grocery store. That could be the gym. That could be internet providers that you cell phone companies, right? You see that all the time. People jumping from cell phone company to T-Mobile to AT&T to Verizon to these 3 that they just keep jumping back and forth. It could be restaurants. And it's not because the business itself failed, but because the needs change and the priorities shift and the budgets also adjust. But when it happens to you and your business, your brain automatically thinks, oh my God, it's my fault. And if somebody left, I did something wrong. And that's what we talk about when I talked about it at the beginning. That's what we call the fear loop. You raise your prices, you wait, you watch, you brace for impact. And the moment that something happens, a cancellation, a question, or a pause, your brain says, see, you messed up. But that's not business logic, and you can't think of it that way. That's why it's called emotional conditioning. So let me ask you this, and honestly, if a grocery store raises prices, do you assume that they're failing? Do you think automatically that they're failing? No. You assume that the cost of change, you assume that inflation happened, you assume that the labor went up. And look, we've seen all of these during COVID. We've talked about it. You don't take it personal. You do one of two things. You either adjust or you go shop somewhere else. If you think about it, you don't sit there and you don't, have drama or resentment over it or have an identity crisis. You just sit in the car and you just go, is this the right fit or is it not the right fit? You don't sit there and go, oh, how could they betray me? That's not the way people think about business. People don't sit there at home and go, how did Mike or how did Tom or how did the pool boys, how can they betray me? No, they look at it from a perspective, and everybody went through price increases and labor and gas and all those things. So they just look at it objectively and see if it's still a right fit or not a right fit. And your pricing decisions don't need to be defended emotionally. They need to be understood logically. And like I always say, and you're going to hear me say this, the math does not lie. So your business has to grow logically, and that is through knowing your numbers. And once you separate pricing from your identity, from your worth, and from your effort, everything, slows down and gets a little bit calmer. Once you know those numbers and you can see those numbers clearly, that everything starts to slow down because you now know the answer and you now know where you need to be. It's not that emotional thing of throwing rates to the wall to increase without knowing. And there's this calm that's going to come over you. And that's really when you start leading. That's really when you start going through those identity changes and you start to make that shift. And that's also when those price increases stop feeling like a gamble and they start feeling like what they really are. It's a necessary adjustment for your business to plan to be around for a long time. Period. End of story. So let me talk a little bit about the math and kind of connect it a little bit to that math that I'm talking about, right? Intentionally, not emotionally. And this is one of the key things that we talk about in the matrix, and it changes everything because the reason that those price increases feel emotional is because most of us pool pros at the beginning of our journey, we don't actually see our numbers. What we do is we feel them. We feel the stress. We feel the tight margins. We feel like we're not making enough money. We feel the exhaustion. And, we just think, okay, well, if I do more pools, I'm going to make more money. But we don't see that bank account growing. But what you need to understand is that feelings don't run your business. Numbers do. Okay. At the end of the day, you have to know those numbers. And so when we talk about it in the matrix, we always talk about, can I charge this? Right. So we say, can I charge this based on those numbers? I've seen those numbers. I know what it is. Now it's almost more not can I charge this, but I have to charge this. What we actually do is we actually say, what does it cost to run this business correctly? By looking at those numbers, by knowing what that number is. And when you actually see your numbers, when you enter them and when the pool pros enter them into that matrix software, everything changes. You guys and girls have heard me talk about this all the time. It's the aha moment. It's the first things that show you your true cost per pool. It's not guessed. It's not rounded. It's not what you hope it is, right? It's real numbers. It's going to include that labor. It's going to include the chems, the food, the insurance, the repairs. If you have an office, all the admin charges, your pay has to be in there, right? And once you see that, and once you see that true number, that is where the light bulb usually goes off. And I talk about it. And I always repeat this from Todd. He said, at that moment, you will fundamentally change the way that you business because you have a clear picture of where you need to be. And most pool pros will realize, look, I'm charging X, but it actually cost me Y to service this pool. And when X, right, is way too close to Y, your nervous system is never going to relax because there's no buffer. There's no protection. And that's really where the fear comes from. One of the things that I want to talk about is that margin is not profit. Margin is protection. right? It's what's saved at the end of the day, what your business keeps at the end of the day to give you that buffer and that protection in that bank account. So if your cost, and I know I talked about X and Y, so let me just break it down a little bit more. But if your cost per pool is $120 and you're charging 130, that $10 profit isn't really profit. That's danger, because if your profit is only $10, one extra chemical dose, one repair, one missed payment, it's all gone. So what's important is that you mathematically see what those numbers are so that you can see it very visibly and you can understand, okay, I am at 120 and I'm charging 130. Yes, my business is making money, but that's a danger zone. I need to protect myself even more. So it really shows you that fear isn't irrational, it's mathematical, right? And when you see that you were charging 130, I'm sorry, when you were charging 130, but it cost you 120, you start to understand that your business is not operating with protection, right? $10 is not enough to protect your business. So let's tie this back up to that fear loop. Okay. So when we talk about fear source number one, being underpaid feels risky, and you weren't underpaid emotionally, you were underpaid structurally. That math never worked. So, what happens is once pricing moves to where, okay, and what I mean by that is where it moves to, right, and costs are covered and owner pay is included. And this one's really important to make sure that that owner pay is included because it's part of that business expense, right? So once that owner pay is included and where the margin exists, your brain doesn't panic because you're charging more. It panics because you're not used to seeing the green. That's not fear of pricing. That's fear of change. So fear source number two, emotional attachment to your customers, right? So first we talked about the numbers. Now we're going to talk a little bit again about that emotional attachment to your customers. And this is one of the things that we teach in the Matrix. When every pool has a healthy margin, when you're making a good profit from every single pool, no one single customer will control your emotions. So one account leaving is not going to threaten your payroll. It's not going to threaten your rent. It's not going to threaten your sanity because you know exactly where you are. And that margin is going to give you that emotional distance, not because you care less, but because you're going to realize and you're going to understand that, hey, my business is stable. And if I lose that one account, it's not the end of the world because I know where I am from a profit and a margin standpoint. Now, fear source number three, equating customers loss with failure. And we talk about this in the Matrix all the time. When you can see your numbers and the business shows you your profit per pool, your route efficiency, and you can figure out the revenue per hour, you stop asking yourself, how many pools do I have? And start asking, how many healthy pools do I have? You stop kind of getting into that mentality that there's in the pool industry, that because I do more pools, I'm more successful. No, we've seen people that have 300, 400 pools, and they're not doing well because the profit and the margins aren't there. And then we see somebody that's doing 100 pools and they have a very healthy profit and a very healthy margin, and they're doing a lot better than those bigger companies. So what happens is losing those unprofitable pools actually improves your numbers. But in our mindset, we just think, oh, we lost pools, therefore, if we lost pools, we're not doing well. And that's not the case. You need to focus on the health of every one of those accounts. And really, that's not an opinion, that's math. We talk about it all the time. And if you do it, that's why you have to wait 90 days, because that math needs time to normalize. And if you're part of the Matrix, if I spent time talking to you, you know that I'm going to tell you, we need to be able to see that history. We need to be able to see the numbers month after month. And the more data that we have, the stronger the business becomes, because you can make the business decisions based on that actual data that you are seeing there. So when you do these rate increases, right? You don't see everything the very next day. The people don't call you right away. So sometimes you have somebody that's going to drop you and they wait 2 or 3 weeks because they started shopping and they started looking and they started trying to find somebody cheaper if that's what was important to them. And then and then 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, they call you and they drop, right? But our job is to really look at those 90 days to be able to see what transitioned during those 90 days, because that one billing cycle isn't going to tell the story. And that one cancellation isn't going to tell you the story either. So you have to see over that period of those 90 days, how many customers dropped, or what was the feedback that you got, or what was the feedback loop that you got. And data over time is going to tell you the truth. And just like I mentioned 30 seconds ago, data is important for your business. This is why I'm always talking about you have to do your financials. And once you do them, you can't stop doing them, because the moment that you stop doing them, you're guessing. And if you're guessing, you're doing things emotionally. And if you're doing things emotionally, the business is going to get the better of you. But when you know this with intentional clarity and math numbers, you're going to be at a lot more peace. You're going to be able to slow down. You're going to be able to think things a little bit better, right? So remember that emotion reacts fast, but the math is going to reveal things slowly. And that's how we want to do this, right? So when you feel that after a price increase, right, here's the reframe for that. Fear isn't telling you that you made a mistake. It's telling you that your business finally moved from that survival mode that we've talked about, from that survival math to sustainability math. And in business, that feels uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable the first time to do it. And I'm not going to lie to you, it did feel uncomfortable to me. But man, once you start to see those numbers, and if you have a dashboard and you track your numbers, and once you start to see that number and you start to see that buffer starts to go up and that margin starts to show up consistently, right? Confidence stops being something that you force, and it becomes something that those numbers are going to support. And that's really the difference of what it is that we're talking about. Hey, everybody, let's do this. Let's take a quick break from our sponsors. When we come back, I want to jump in a little bit to real world customer behavior. So we'll jump into that next. We'll be right back.
Pool pros have specific needs when it comes to general liability insurance. The SPPA program has you covered. With 3 tailored and customizable general liability options, SPPA makes it easy for pool pros to feel secure. Find out more and get covered at thesppa.com. U.S. Motors Neptune Variable Speed Motor provides a versatile replacement solution for all your pool pump motor needs. This motor can communicate with pool control systems, provide low voltage options to work with time clocks, and can be installed as a standalone pump motor. The Neptune motor can be easily installed on existing pumps, upgrading them to a variable speed pump without the need for replumbing. Enjoy energy savings and quiet operation by installing a Neptune Variable Speed Motor today. For more information and to find your local distributor, visit usmotors.com/pool. Blu-ray XL is the power of minerals working for you. Reduce your overall chemical costs and labor up to 50% guaranteed. Whether you have 20 accounts or 20,000, Blu-ray XL's direct pricing and free shipping to the pool trade have you covered. Improving pool professionals' profit and work-life balance is what they do. Blu-ray XL, the real mineral purifier. Visit them at BluRayXL.com.
Blu-ray all day.
Meet the pipeline pump from Aquastar Pool Products, the next generation of variable speed pumps designed for serious efficiency. At its core is a high-performance permanent magnet motor that's totally enclosed and fan-cooled, delivering consistent energy-saving operation. Paired with Aquastar's patented high-efficiency volute design, the pipeline pump maintains optimal flow while cutting down on energy use. And it's not just efficient, it's incredibly quiet. Thanks to a high-tech rubber motor mount that absorbs vibrations and dampens sound, the pipeline runs smooth and quiet by limiting turbulence. Its 2.5-inch internal frame ensures unrestricted water flow, and it's available in both 1.5 HP and 3.0 HP models, each with 2-inch and 2.5-inch union fittings for flexible and efficient installation. Experience the pipeline difference: incredibly quiet operation, peak efficiency, and proven performance. Ask your supplier for the pipeline pump from Aquastar. Available now. Care Solutions, for over 30 years, is proud to provide products that make pool service easier than ever before. Its unique enzyme formulations in Pro Series Pro Blend improve efficiency of your pool program while reducing frequency of filter cleaning and scum lines. Natural Chemistry is also well known for its wide variety of phosphate removal solutions that include a non-clouding formula in Phos-Free and extremely high-range removal with Pro Series Phos Remove or Phos-Free Max. Save time, save money, save work with Pro Series products. Stop sacrificing durability or efficiency with the help of Raypak's new Avia HD models that utilize NITEC, their exclusive industry-first technology. NITEC heat exchanger technology is Raypak's latest solution to superior strength and maximum efficiency when it comes to residential pool heating. With 900% more nickel compared to copper nickel in critical surfaces, NITEC creates an ideal surface to protect against scale formation and erosion without compromising on Avia's 84% thermal efficiency. Learn more at raypak.com/NITEC. The next evolution in lighting is here. Universal Color Logic 2.0 from Hayward. The latest in pool and spa lighting was designed with you in mind, making installation a breeze. Upgrades include a detachable cord and first-of-a-kind adjustable lower catch to overcome variations in plaster thickness. As always, Universal Color Logic lights retrofit into virtually any in-ground pool or spa while delivering industry-leading, vibrant color. Visit hayward.com to discover more.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Pool Nation Live podcast. We continue our conversation about the 90 days after you do those rate increases. And so I want to talk really quick a little bit about kind of real world customer behavior. And here's one of the things that most of us pool pros don't expect. And most customers don't even read the full notice. And that's the reality of it. I think when I get mine from different things, I just don't read them anywhere, right? Like, here's the price increase. It is what it is. Poop, you move on. And all they see is a price increase. They see the effective date and they see the new amount. That's what I do with all of mine, whether it's insurance, whether it's whatever it is, home taxes or whatever. And that's it. They don't sit there and they're not going to sit there and analyze, oh, does this guy make enough money? And they don't sit there and try to figure out your profits. They don't calculate your chemical costs. They don't debate your labor. They just subconsciously ask one question, and that is, is this still worth it to me? Do I just keep it or do I change? And at the end of the day, for most customers, the answer is yes. And if you talk to pool pros that have raised their rates, that I've never heard one pool pro tell me I raised increases and I lost my business. Most of the conversation is I might have lost 1, 2, 3 pools, but now I'm making more money for doing less pools because of the rate increase that I did. And so for most customers, the answer to, is it still worth it for me, is going to be yes. And let's be realistic. For them to switch pool service companies, it's inconvenient. It's risky. Now they got to let a new person in that backyard. They got to start figuring out how good of a job they do. Are they going to show up? And there's that uncertainty in there. And there is a big, huge value in consistency. And so if you're consistent and you're there and you show up and you solve the problems and you fix the pool issues and you're on top of it, that's consistency. And consistency is valuable. And the reality is, and we talk about this all the time, the few customers that leave, they were probably already questioning value before the increase. And the increase really isn't the reason for them leaving or the departure. It reveals it, right? And that's one thing that is important and you need to understand as you go through these rate increases. And we talk about it most of the time. Ask pool pros, just talk to pool pros. And most of the time, those people that leave, pool pros are like, man, I'm glad that they left. And it's because maybe they didn't want to invest in their pool. They treated it as just this pit in the backyard. And when things go wrong or you need to clean the filter, they fight you on it, or they don't give you a key to the gate, or the backyard grass is grown everywhere and they really don't care about that pool. A lot of times it's those customers. I'm not saying always, but a lot of the times it's those customers that don't care about their backyards. And you don't want that as a company. You want people that are going to treat that backyard and that pool the way that it needs to be treated. Filtering versus losing. And so with that just said, let's talk a little bit about that filtering and that losing. And filtering, when I say filtering, is when those customers, those low margin, those low profitabilities, those accounts that you're not making much money on leave, or the high stress accounts. And I've had this. I've had a lady stand next to me, watch me brush and tell me that I'm not brushing enough, right? And that's a high stress account that you do a good job, the pool looks great, but it's still a high stress customer that just drives you absolutely nuts. And the crappy pools, the high maintenance pools, the pools that you bid that have tons of trees, that get tons of vegetation, and you're getting back there and you regret going into the backyard. Why did I take this pool? So filtering is when you're getting rid of those low margin, the high stress, the high maintenance accounts, but suddenly, poof, here's the magic. Those people start to leave, and without you noticing, all of a sudden your route's starting to tighten and your phone's going to ring less because you don't have that customer calling and bugging you. Your day feels a little bit lighter, right? You get into this motion and this rhythm and you feel a lot better. And the thing is, emotionally at the beginning, it feels wrong because we have trained ourselves to believe that more customers equal success. We talk about it all the time. People are always like, how many pools do you do? And based on how big they are, people are like, wow. But more customers do not equal success. That is not true. Better customers equal success. And that is something that you will transition when we talk about that business identity shift that you go through. At some point, you will shift into this identity that you will understand that better customers equal success. Better pools equal success, because profitability is not about volume. It's about efficiency and margin. Okay. And once you understand that, that customer loss stops feeling like that rejection, and it starts feeling like that refinement, right? Your business starts to get a lot better. And I hear pool pros talk about it all the time, is now I have all the pools that are cherry, right? That's that refinement that we're talking about, where pools get better, they get more profitable, they get easier to do. They're not consuming as many chemicals. So what happens is you go into that internal shift, and it's really kind of who you start to become as a business owner. And when people talk about raising prices, they usually talk about customers. And what they'll do is they'll talk about the reactions, they'll talk about the cancellations, they'll talk about the money, but nobody talks about that identity change that happens within inside you. And honestly, that's the biggest shift of all as a business owner. Because once that pricing finally aligns with your effort, once you finally feel, right, that your effort that you're doing is finally aligned with that pricing, you stop operating from that resentment. And that resentment is going to show up in ways that most people don't even realize. You're not going to dread those stops anymore. You don't look at the schedule and go, oh, I got to go stop at this one, or this one is next. You don't rush through the day trying to survive it and just trying to get through it. You don't take every issue personally from every customer, whether it's the text or the question or the small problems, because when you're underpaid, everything feels heavier. And every one of those little extra requests that the customer has, or the delay feels disrespectful, or every problem feels like it's coming straight out of your pocket. But when the pricing is right, that pressure is going to completely lift. And you also stop saying yes automatically to everything. And that's a big one. What happens is when your margins are thin, you say yes because you're afraid to say no, because you are afraid that you're going to lose that customer. And you're going to say yes to all those little things, right? Those last minute requests, or even though you've trained your customers for tons of times that if they do need an extra pool clean on a Friday because they're having a party on the Saturday, to call you in advance. And then they call you Friday evening, right? Oh, I forgot. This needs to be done because I have a pool tomorrow. Those last minute requests start to drive you crazy. Those extra favors, those just one situations. And not because they make sense, but because you don't feel like you have room to push back. And if you are starting and you have employees and they don't communicate with you and tell you in advance that you're going to need that extra service on Friday, now you have to send an employee to go do that. And if your margin is not there, you're afraid to say, I could definitely do that, but there's going to be an extra charge. And you don't say that. And then what happens is the business suffers because now you have to get an employee, get a tech, drive them back to that house. That's costing you money, the gas, the car, the wear, the tear, the time for that employee to go there, the chemicals to do it, all that costs you money. And if your margin is not there and you're only making $10, guess what? Now you're losing money. So once your pricing aligns with that effort, you have that space, right? And you really kind of have that space to be able to think. You have that space to be able to respond instead of just react. And that's what I talk about. Something subtle but powerful happens, and you don't realize it at the moment. It's not till maybe a year or two later that you realize, man, I've really changed as a business owner, because you really start thinking like a business owner and you don't see it at the moment. And you're not doing it emotionally. You're not doing defensively, right? You're being very strategic. So what happens is you start asking yourself questions like, does this make sense for the business? And not, are they going to be mad? And you start asking yourself, is this sustainable long-term? Not, can I just get through this week? Or is this aligned with how I want to run this company? Not, how do I avoid conflict? And that shift alone changes how you start to show up. And here's the part that I think most of us pool pros don't expect is the internal calm. Customers feel it. And I think a lot of that is because you're probably going to hear this often, that they say that calm leadership is attractive. And it's true. When somebody's calm and they're in charge, that part is attractive of business. And it's not just for your customers, but it's also for your employees. So if you have employees, that calm leadership is going to be something that they look at and that it's seen. And when you're not rushed, you communicate better. And when you're not resentful, you're a lot more patient. And this goes for both. This goes for the customers and the employees. And when you're not stressed, you're a lot clearer and confident in your answers. And the customers are going to trust that. Your employees are going to trust that. And they're going to feel that stability. They're going to feel that consistency. They feel like, okay, this pool pro knows exactly what it is that they're doing. And what happens is, ironically, this a lot of times improves the retention, which is the next thing that we'll talk about in the next podcast. Not because you lowered prices, not because you gave them more, but because you were showing up as that true leader, as that true business owner, not somebody constantly trying to hold things together. And those are things that people see. So, that shift doesn't mean that you care less. It's that you care healthier. You can still care about your customers without sacrificing yourself and without sacrificing your employees. And you can still provide great service without you or your business absorbing every problem emotionally. So you can still be kind without being depleted. And that's what aligned pricing gives you. It doesn't just give you all money. It's not just from the money side, but it's also from the business side. But it gives you more capacity. And that capacity, man, that capacity could be capacity to lead. It could be capacity to think. It could be capacity to build something that's going to be able to last. And as a business owner, once you experience that shift, trust me, you will not go back, because you realize that the problem was never, the work is never the problem. It was carrying the business without enough margin and profit to be able to support it. So that's that difference that I'm talking about when I'm talking about intentionally versus emotionally. So when I was talking to Mike, a lot of what we were talking about is those 90 days. And we were like, oh my God, what would be a good rule to stick by to be able to look at the data? And I always say this, and I always talk to Zach and tell them, and I tell it to a lot of people, when you hire somebody, wait 90 days and they'll show you their true colors, right? It's always at 90 days. And so it's important with this that you also have a waiting time to be able to see the data and see the information. 90 days is really not arbitrary, and sometimes it's a little bit more, right? It actually will take, right, that one full billing cycle to start to normalize, that one round of customer reactions to settle, one session of expenses to reflect the reality, and you start to see that margin. And if you change prices again before the 90 days, you're reacting, you're leading. So this is why it's so important to actually raise rates intentionally by knowing your numbers and not emotionally. So it's really important that you understand that every strong business system is going to need time, is going to need data, and it's going to need stability. So what happens is every emotion creates noise, it creates that disruption. And time is actually going to create that clarity. That time and being able to see those numbers and that data is going to give you that clarity. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, that's why it's so important to be able to track your numbers all the time, not just do it once and then go, oh, I'll do it 6 months later. No, it's part of the business. You have to do it every single month so you know exactly where you are. So when you do these, your job as a business owner is to really look at this for the first 90 days and really to observe, right, what the data is telling you. Let's talk a little bit about maybe self-sabotage patterns. And I think some of the most common self-sabotage moves are, and it's by nature that we do this at the beginning, is I'll throw in a little bit extra, or I'll keep them at the old rate, or I'll explain my costs in details, and you don't need to do that. I don't want to lose them. And every one of those moves is going to undermine trust in yourself. And one of the things that we always talk about, and Zach, John, and I are always talking about, you're not here to be liked. You're here to run a stable business. And I'm not saying go out there and be rude to your customers and you don't have to be liked, you have to be liked. But what I mean is that you're here to run a sustainable business. And in order for you to be able to survive, you have to charge the right rates. And if you don't charge the right rates, you're going to be out of business. So respect is going to come from that consistency. And you hear me preach this all the time. There's a huge value in consistency in our industry and what you do when it comes to servicing pools. One of your biggest tools is that consistency, because a customer that knows that you're consistent and they can count on you will always stay. And they'll look at that price increase and go, they are consistent. They are always going to be here. They always take care of the things. Therefore, there is a big, huge value in there. Customers love that consistency, and it gives you credibility. Be consistent. I think one of the biggest things that we need to talk about is you did that rate. So you went through that emotion of having to do your first rate increase and raise your prices and that emotional roller coaster that we go through. But what we don't talk about is, okay, well, what do I do with that margin? So if at the end of the day, I had 10%, and now it's up to 18%, that's 8% more, right? So that could be a lot. So what do I do with that margin? What do I do with that buffer? What do I do with that protection? And really creating that margin is not about spending money. It's not about, I'm going to go to 20% and now spend more money. Once you raise those prices, your margin is not about spending it now, because this is where a lot of businesses and a lot of different industries get tripped up. Margin is not extra money. It's not play money. It's not, let me go do this or let me go do that, and I could play and do all these other things. It's not a reward for working hard. That margin is that breathing room. Okay. And margin is what allows you to exhale instead of holding your breath every month, trying to figure out what it is, if you're surviving or not surviving. You've created that buffer. So when that extra margin, now that you've raised your rates and done all that, starts to show up, the temptation is to immediately upgrade something, right? Whether it's new truck, new tools, new equipment, new subscriptions. And man, none of those are bad, but timing is going to matter. And more importantly, you need to strategize. You need to sit down and look strategically if that money needs to be spent. And if it does need to be spent, where does it need to be spent? So before you buy anything new, you need to slow down and ask yourself better questions. Not, can I afford this, but is this going to reduce stress? If this purchase doesn't lower pressure, lower chaos, or lower risk, it's probably not the right first move. The next question, will this increase stability? Does it make the business more predictable? Does it reduce breakdowns? Does it protect the cash flow? Stability is more valuable than growth when you're coming out of survival mode. And then the most important question is, does this protect the business? Okay. Because protection in a business looks like cash reserve, maintain equipment, reliable systems, time to think instead of react. Protection is going to keep one bad week from becoming a bad year. So this is why order matters. Build that buffer first. That means money in the bank that isn't already spoken for, right? You don't have it pre-planned to be spent, not mentally spent, just sitting there. That buffer that you have in there is going to buy you time, and it buys good decisions. And second, it's going to allow you to fix inefficiencies in your business. It's going to allow you to tighten routes, replace stressed equipment, eliminate wasted hours, clean up your systems, okay? Every efficiency that you fix multiplies the value of your margin. And then last, upgrade, right? Upgrade last. Upgrades feel good, but upgrades need to be funded by stability and really not by optimism. And one of the things that we do as humans is we always tend to be very optimistic. We're always going to do all these extra millions of dollars, right? But when you do, and I'm not saying not to be optimistic, but you also have to be a realist. You have to understand what the reality is. When you follow this order, you're not just going to grow faster, but more importantly, it's going to give you this calmness, and you're going to be able to grow a lot calmer. And those calmer situations, right, are going to allow you to make better decisions. And that's going to be the short term between short-term relief and long-term leadership. And we'll talk about that a little bit, right? Because once you understand that, margin is going to stop being something you rush to spend and start being something you protect on purpose. And that's truly how businesses are built. Now, I just mentioned right now about long-term leadership, and I want to talk about that last here before we call it a day, right? Because at the end of the day, you can do all these things with regards to learning how to raise prices intentionally and not emotionally, and doing all those things. But leadership also plays into this. And as you grow your business, we were talking about how your business grows. You personally, as a business owner, transition into those leadership situations as well. So here's what we talk about: the final evolution. And I'm always telling you that you need to know your numbers, but pricing is not math alone. So I always joke that you need to know your numbers and you need to know your numbers, but there's a leadership factor to it as well. And yes, you have to know your numbers. Yes, you have to know your costs. Yes, you have to know your margins and your profits, but pricing is bigger than math. Pricing is about leadership. And leadership shows up before things break, not after. Showing up after is being reactive, right? So reactive businesses change pricing when they're in pain, when they're feeling it, when they have this gut feeling, when they're having to work harder and that bank account doesn't grow, when they're burned out, when the cash is tight, when the stress is high. And that's not planning, that's surviving. And that's not what you want to be doing as a business. And what's going to happen is leaders don't wait for pain to force change. That leadership is going to make you look ahead. Those leaders look ahead. They're strategic. They sit down and they think about the future and what's needed. And when I talk about being strategic, everybody always talks about the strategic and says, well, what is strategy? And I don't know how to be strategic. Look, strategic is simple. Strategic is you need to sit down, you need to look at your business, you got to put some plans in place. You got to look at the pros and cons of every one of those situations and create a roadmap. That's being strategic, looking at the situations, trying to figure out what can be the obstacles and what are the things that you're going to put in place to overcome those obstacles. So when I talk about being a good leader is they anticipate the rising costs. They anticipate the labor pressure. They anticipate the wear and tear. They anticipate the growth. Okay. And they adjust before the business feels it. So we were talking about it during COVID, right? We all saw the labor pressure. We all saw the rising costs. And you have to adjust. As a leader, you have to be able to look at those things and see that those are things are becoming an issue and you have to adjust them. A true leader has to do that. So what they do is, like I said, they adjust before the business feels it. So that is what leadership does. It removes those surprises. So once that pricing becomes a routine review that you're going to look at, whether it's every year or every 6 months, whatever it is, it really stops being that panic conversation. And it's not a once in every few years kind of event. It's not something that you avoid until you can no longer avoid it. It's routine. It's part of business. It's part of your strategy. It's part of sitting down once a year and looking at it and saying, where are we? Let's look at ourselves in the mirror and can we afford this or not? And it's scheduled, it's intentional, and it's calm. And you stop asking, can I ask prices? Can I raise prices? And you start asking, is my pricing still aligned with reality? Is it aligned with what the business needs? And what happens is that shift removes that emotion. When you review pricing regularly, what happens is it stops feeling like it did that first time personal. It just starts to become your regular service that you do, right? It's like Zach says all the time, that Leanne says is you have to practice the muscle, right? And once you practice the muscle, you get used to it. You don't even think about it. You just do it. And reviewing your pricing is exactly the same thing. Is you just have to practice that muscle until it becomes part of the normal routine. You have to get out of that comfort zone. When we talk about doing that pricing regularly, it's just like everything else, right? It's like servicing the equipment or cleaning the filters or adjusting the climate. You do it over and over again and it just becomes normal. And if you look at it, you're not emotional about those things. You do them because it keeps everything healthy, right? It keeps the water without algae. It keeps the water balance. It keeps all that. So this is no different. You have to do it in order to keep things running smoothly without problems. And that pricing is going to work the same way. You have to make sure that you adjust it. And the payoff is when that pricing is aligned, your business is going to become a lot more predictable. And you're going to get that predictable cash flow. You're going to know when that money's coming in. It's going to take that stress away. You're going to have predictable profit, predictable margins. And what that creates is predictable stress levels. And if all those things are good, you can predict that your stress level is going to be low. And what you can do is you can sit there and you can plan for your business. You can invest and you can step back without panic, and the business will run without you. You'll make that transition from being able to go take that vacation and not worry about it. And that predictability is going to give you choices. It's going to give you choices to grow or not grow. Whether you want to grow, then great. You have that there. So you have the ability to grow, or it gives you the choice to slow down, right? You have that profitability. You have that margin. You're happy where you're at. You don't want to keep growing. You don't want to keep adding employees because you know where you're at. You know that you're happy with the amount of money that you're making. That's fine. Look, I know pool pros that are single poolers that make a hell of a lot of money. And they're like, look, I don't want the headache. I don't want to grow. I don't want to do more pools. I don't want the headache of managing more employees or any employees, right? I'm happy where I'm at, but they know how profitable their business is, and that gives them the ability to do that. On the opposite side, it gives you the ability to hire and bring more people that allow you to scale, because if you have that buffer there, that business can afford that until that person is able to do more pools. It puts you in a better spot. And like I said, it gives you choices to rest and avoid that burnout that we're always talking about. So that's what actually freedom really looks like. It's not working less by accident, but working less intentionally, right? Because you're making more profit from those pools. It's not reacting, but leading. So once you experience that level of control, you start to realize something really important. And that is that pricing wasn't the problem. Avoiding pricing was your problem, right? Avoiding that price increase was your problem. And the moment that you take ownership of that and you face the music and you look at yourself in the mirror, your business is going to stop running you and you're going to start running the business. And at the end of the day, that's leadership right there. All right, everybody, let's take our final word from our sponsors. And when we come back, hey, I'm by myself, so I guess I'm going to have to throw the final words to myself. We'll be right back.
Pool pros have specific needs when it comes to general liability insurance. The SPPA program has you covered. With 3 tailored and customizable general liability options, SPPA makes it easy for pool pros to feel secure. Find out more and get covered at thesppa.com. U.S. Motors Neptune Variable Speed Motor provides a versatile replacement solution for all your pool pump motor needs. This motor can communicate with pool control systems, provide low voltage options to work with time clocks, and can be installed as a standalone pump motor. The Neptune motor can be easily installed on existing pumps, upgrading them to a variable speed pump without the need for replumbing. Enjoy energy savings and quiet operation by installing a Neptune Variable Speed Motor today. For more information and to find your local distributor, visit usmotors.com/pool. Blu-ray XL is the power of minerals working for you. Reduce your overall chemical costs and labor up to 50% guaranteed. Whether you have 20 accounts or 20,000, Blu-ray XL's direct pricing and free shipping to the pool trade have you covered. Improving pool professionals' profit and work-life balance is what they do. Blu-ray XL, the real mineral purifier. Visit them at BluRayXL.com.
Blu-ray all day.
Meet the pipeline pump from Aquastar Pool Products, the next generation of variable speed pumps designed for serious efficiency. At its core is a high-performance permanent magnet motor that's totally enclosed and fan-cooled, delivering consistent energy-saving operation. Paired with Aquastar's patented high-efficiency volute design, the pipeline pump maintains optimal flow while cutting down on energy use. And it's not just efficient, it's incredibly quiet. Thanks to a high-tech rubber motor mount that absorbs vibrations and dampens sound, the pipeline runs smooth and quiet by limiting turbulence. Its 2.5-inch internal frame ensures unrestricted water flow, and it's available in both 1.5 HP and 3.0 HP models, each with 2-inch and 2.5-inch union fittings for flexible and efficient installation. Experience the pipeline difference: incredibly quiet operation, peak efficiency, and proven performance. Ask your supplier for the pipeline pump from Aquastar. Available now. Care Solutions, for over 30 years, is proud to provide products that make pool service easier than ever before. Its unique enzyme formulations in Pro Series Pro Blend improve efficiency of your pool program while reducing frequency of filter cleaning and scum lines. Natural Chemistry is also well known for its wide variety of phosphate removal solutions that include a non-clouding formula in Phos-Free and extremely high-range removal with Pro Series Phos Remove or Phos-Free Max. Save time, save money, save work with Pro Series products. Stop sacrificing durability or efficiency with the help of Raypak's new Avia HD models that utilize NITEC, their exclusive industry-first technology. NITEC heat exchanger technology is Raypak's latest solution to superior strength and maximum efficiency when it comes to residential pool heating. With 900% more nickel compared to copper nickel in critical surfaces, NITEC creates an ideal surface to protect against scale formation and erosion without compromising on Avia's 84% thermal efficiency. Learn more at raypak.com/NITEC. The next evolution in lighting is here. Universal Color Logic 2.0 from Hayward. The latest in pool and spa lighting was designed with you in mind, making installation a breeze. Upgrades include a detachable cord and first-of-a-kind adjustable lower catch to overcome variations in plaster thickness. As always, Universal Color Logic lights retrofit into virtually any in-ground pool or spa while delivering industry-leading, vibrant color. Visit Hayward.com to discover more.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Pool Nation Live podcast. Today we had the conversation of you've raised your rates the 90 days after, and what do you do? So we talked a little bit about that. Once again, final thoughts here. Don't have Zach or John, so I have to do my final thoughts myself. And what can I say here? First of all, I want to once again tell everybody happy holidays. Hope you had a great Christmas. Hope that 2026 is your year, that you just absolutely crush it, kill it out there, grow, and are able to do everything that you want to do out there. So it's going to be a fun year. We've got a lot of things in store. We got some big, huge surprises that are going to be coming out. They're not surprises. There'll be surprises for everybody, but we've been working on a couple things, a couple dreams for Pool Nation of what we've wanted to do for the last couple of years. And it's been, the plan, the growth, the being able to accomplish it, the being able to do it. And I think 2026 will be the year. So I hope that's the case, because we'll be able to share all of that with everybody out there. Want to thank our entire community for being absolutely so amazing and being part of our community out there. With that said, I hope everybody has a great evening, and we will catch everybody on the next live podcast. Have a great one. Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Pool Nation podcast, a member of the Pool Nation family. You can listen to us live every Friday here at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Central, and 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. You can find us at Pool Nation or poolnationpodcast.com, on Facebook, or on Instagram at pool.nation. And to find more info about Pool Invoice, the billing software built specifically for the pool industry, go to poolinvoice.com. Before you go, this is what the pool industry has been waiting for. PoolmanUniversity.com. It's the first platform dedicated to learning the swimming pool service and repair industry. A pool service community where you can connect and find videos on business, service, water chemistry, and repairs. See you there at PoolmanUniversity.com.